Okay, so in this video, I'm going to introduce you now how to graph the sine function. And then in another video, we're going to do the cosine function. But we've been studying the unit circle for a while, and now you should be familiar with how to plot the values in degrees for our angles as well as in radians, right? And then once we did that, we also were able to finally realize where do these coordinates come from, right? We talked about where these coordinates came from, and essentially we basically just drew, right, the triangles that were associated with our angles. And then once we figured that out, we just used SOHCAHTOA, right, to come up with those values, okay? So now that we have our unit circle set, now let's go ahead and graph our first function, which I said was sine of x. And then you're going to follow along with me on the paper that I'm going to provide you with. And then we're also going to do it on Desmos, so you could see it both on paper and then using our graphing calculator. And then understanding why sine looks the way it looks. Okay, so let's get started. Now, you will notice that the horizontal axis has 0, pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3, pi over 2, and so forth. Now, if you're wondering what this means or what does this represent, take a look at our unit circle. So look, we have 0, pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3, pi over 2, and etc., right? So the horizontal axis is going to represent the angle measure in radians, right? We could have chosen to use degrees, but usually when we graph, we tend to use radians, okay? So that's why I put pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3. These values are just the same values that we have here. Pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3, pi over 2, and so forth. Okay? Alright, so that is the horizontal axis. The vertical axis is going to represent the value of the y component for each coordinate point. Because remember what we said, in the unit circle, the sine is opposite over hypotenuse. The hypotenuse value is 1. So essentially, the opposite is, and I'll draw it here, the opposite for any of these angles is the vertical distance to that coordinate point around the circle. So remember, the x component represents cosine value at the angle. The y component represents the sine at this angle. Okay? So that's why for graphing f of x equals to sine of x, we look at the y component value at that angle. Okay? So let's start. At 0, right? At 0 radians, or again, we could say 0 degrees, but at 0 radians, what's the y component value for 0 radians? 0, right? So 0 radians, the y component value is 0. So we're going to come here, and at 0, well, we're just at 0, 0, 0. Put a point right there. Okay? Next, our pi over 6. So at pi over 6, what's the y component value? 1/2. Pi over 6, we're at 1/2. So here at our graph paper, pi over 6, we're going to go up to 1/2. Boom, right there. Okay? Alright, next. Pi over 4. Okay? Pi over 4, our y component is radical 2 over 2, And that one we are not going to plot here. We're going to plot it on Desmos. And the reason why is because, well, radical 2 over 2, it's not a nice value to graph by hand like a half or 1. So that one we are going to skip. Okay, again, we will use this one on Desmos. Okay, similarly, for pi over 3, the y value is radical 3 over 2. Again, another value that is a decimal value, and it's not that trivial to graph by hand. So let's go on to the next one. Let's graph pi over 2. For pi over 2, is it easy for us to graph 1? Yes, right? So at pi over 2, we are at 1. So let's go to pi over 2. Pi over 2, we are at 1. So 1, pi over 2, boom, right there. Okay? So we have pi over 2 is at 1, pi over 6 is at a half, and we were at 0, 0. So far we have these 3 points. Okay? Continuing. At 2 pi over 3, we're at radical 3 over 2. At 3 pi over 4, we are at radical 2 over 2. Right? At 5 pi over 6, we are at 1/2. This one, yeah, pretty easy for us to graph by hand. So let's go to 5 pi over 6. We are going to go to 1/2. Okay, so 5 pi over 6, we are at 1/2. Boom, right there. Okay? Alright, let's continue. 5 pi over 6, we're at 1/2. At pi, we are where? At 0, right? Pi, comma, 0. So let's go to our graph. At pi, we are at 0. Okay, so it looks like it goes up and then down. Right? At least that's what it's looking like. Let's continue. So at pi, we're at 0. 7 pi over 6, we are at negative 1/2. We could graph that one. At 7 pi over 6, go to negative 1/2. Right there. Okay? Now, at 5 pi over 4, negative radical 2 over 2, no. 4 pi over 3, negative radical 3 over 2, no. At 3 pi over 2, where are we at? Negative 1. Okay, so let's do that one. 3 pi over 2, negative 1. So we're at 3 pi over 2, negative 1. Here. Boom. Okay, 3 pi over 2, negative 1. Let's continue. 5 pi over 3, negative radical 3 over 2. We're just going to skip that one. 7 pi over 4, negative radical 2 over 2. Again, let's skip that one. 11 pi over 6, we are at negative 1/2. Alright, let's do that one. 11 pi over 6, we are at negative 1/2. Boom, right there. Okay? Let's continue. 11 pi over 6, negative 1/2. So now at 2 pi, where are we? We're at 0. Oh, we completed one full rotation. So 2 pi, we are at 0. So let's go to 2 pi, 0. Okay, now, obviously, we could continue, right? But we're going to graph just one period or one rotation around the unit circle. Okay? Alright, so now I want you to do your best to draw a path that connects our points. So I will do the same. So it's going to go this way. Looks like it's coming down, right? And then we're going to go this way, and we'll stop there. Okay, so there we have it. We graphed one period or one rotation around our unit circle utilizing the angle, right, and the y component, because again, the y component represents the sine function. Okay, so there you have it. We graphed it. In the next video, you're going to follow along, and we are going to graph sine of x, right? F of x equals sine of x, using Desmos and again our unit circle. And in decimals, we are actually going to plot all of the points, not just the ones that are easy to graph by hand. And then we're going to see how this compares to the graph that we are going to do on decimals. Okay? All right.